Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm Mark Gorash, and I'm here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold, who is at the airport begging for a flight out of Tampa. I think he's been there long enough. Ev, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, ready to get a chance to go home. Happy to be back for a little bit. I'm not going to be covering the Houston series. I'm going to give that one over to Jeff Seidel, who gladly said he'd be willing to take it off my hands so I can go home and see Savannah, see the cats, see my mom, see my dad, catch up with the family and get a few days at home before the home opener, which is on Thursday at Comerica Park against the Red Sox. So just kind of resetting the batteries, recharging a little bit, and then it'll be good to go. We'll be ready to roll for the home opener.
What day did you go down to Lakeland?
I don't know, the day before the Super Bowl, whatever that day was.
So you've been down there for like almost 7 weeks, huh?
Feels like forever.
Yeah, this weekend felt like forever.
Outscored 21-3, 14 hits and 95 at-bats, 1 home run, 6 walks, 30 strikeouts. It's not dominating the strike zone. And a season-opening sweep at the hands of the Tampa Bay Rays. It was not pleasant to be a Tiger. It was not.
Jeffrey Springs dominated the strike zone.
He did. Their pitchers can do that.
I think I tweeted at one point in time he had thrown 21 fastballs and he had 11 called strikes. It's a little worrisome when you're taking that many called strikes, and I can't even remember how many were right down the middle. But you and I were talking a little off air, and his capacity to tunnel pitches on top of each other out of the same arm slot, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty insane just to watch him do that with the changeup and the fastball. And the way that he's able to work those two pitches. And the problem is that the Tigers were just left guessing at that point, right? And you can't really guess. You have to have some type of a game plan. And it seemed like there was absolutely no game plan from anybody up there. The Tigers on Sunday, they were no hit through 6 innings. And Riley Green came up in the 7th, and he faced Colin Poche, a reliever. So they ended up going off a Springs and pulling him out of the game just because of pitch count and the fact that it's early in the season. But yeah, he had a no-hitter going. And then Riley Green comes in, faces a lefty, and is able to break up a no-hit bid with a leadoff infield single. It was a grounder to first base, and he just barely beat the pitcher coming over to cover the bag, and then ended up breaking up the no-hitter. But it sure felt like a no-hitter the way that it went. Jake Rogers hit a home run in the 9th inning. But you want to talk about a lifeless game? That was a lifeless game. And it felt like 3 lifeless games, Mark, to be completely honest. I just read off the stats. I read off some of the numbers from the offense. You come in and you preach, dominate the strike zone all spring training. You go out and you acquire some players for your offense that supposedly dominate the strike zone. And there was absolutely none of that from anybody top down. It was pretty rough at bats the whole way. I thought the Tigers were actually pretty good on Thursday on opening day. They faced Shane McClanahan. We know how good he is. He's absolutely nasty. If I told you he was going to win the Cy Young, I don't think you would be surprised. And so a pitcher like that's really good. And the Tigers did a good job of trying to work some at-bats, working a little bit deeper into the count. But he had his way with them still. And then really the last 2 games were kind of a disaster, just with a 12-2 blowout on Saturday and then losing the way they did 5-1 on Sunday for the 3-game sweep. It was, like I said, it was miserable to be a Tiger this weekend.
Well, Jeffrey, Tampa had 14 strikeouts today, and Detroit walked once. So pretty much tells you everything you want to know about their effort at the plate. They had 14 hits for the entire weekend, 3 runs. All 3 runs were consolation runs in the 2 days. They didn't score till I think they were down 12-0 yesterday. So, all in all, a ridiculously forgettable, cover your eyes weekend to begin the season. AJ didn't look too concerned yesterday, but today he looked pretty upset. He used the word competitive, and I don't think he used the word competitive in a nice way. So I think he told me you put that in a story for tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I mean, just writing about something for Monday, just in the sense of kind of what this means. I do think we need to kind of put some of this in perspective, Mark. I think it's important when you have a team that they lose 3 games in a row, but not only did they lose 3 games in a row, they lost 3 games while looking completely uncompetitive, and as I wrote, without any sign of resiliency. There was no fight out of this team. There was no aggression. There was no swagger. There was no "we belong here." It was like this was a little league team playing against the big leaguers, and they were just happy to be there, right? Like, and they just got absolutely crushed in every way, shape, and form in all three games. It wasn't pretty at all, and I think we need to put it in perspective because, look, the reality is it's 3 games. It's only 3 games. I think pushing the panic button is an overreaction, but at the same time, there are some serious holes on this team, and there's some serious problems when you look forward, especially considering their schedule. Mark, it doesn't get any easier. It does not. They go and they get on a plane. They're going to go play the Houston Astros. Then they come home and play the Red Sox. Then they go play the Blue Jays. And then it's the Giants and the Brewers are in there and the Mets and, Cleveland Guardians and Baltimore Orioles and St. Louis Cardinals, Seattle Mariners. Like, those are all really good teams. And that's your first 40 games of the season. Things can get really ugly really fast. And you hit the nail on the head with the competitive piece, right? Like, that's the biggest thing is you just got to show some fight. You got to show that you belong.
First of all, what's a little concerning to me is, Tampa has played this style of play for years. AJ was very familiar with how they play. And their pitchers are going to throw strikes. They're going to attack you. But more importantly, Tampa is looking to leverage every single time you make a mistake. And every time they made a mistake before the next hitter, I had tweeted, Tampa is waiting to leverage the mistake. And literally for 3 days, that's what they did every time the opportunity presented itself. They made every mistake into a glaring, giant canyon of an opportunity. And they turned 1-run innings into 4-run innings. They turned a 15% catch probability on a pop-up that everybody thought Spencer Torkelson should have caught, that nobody really should have expected him to catch. And, all of a sudden, the next swing was a run. And, you cannot make mistakes against Tampa, or you have to have enough swagger to return volley and do a few things to put them back on their heels. Detroit never did that. Not once, not one at bat, not one inning, not one anything. They got 2 decent starting pitcher performances, one from Eduardo Rodriguez Thursday. They got a very good start out of Wentz today. Should have been out of the inning with 2 runs. Foley doesn't execute. It's 4 runs. And, you just cannot play Major League Baseball when you execute at that level of inconsistency. And, you're not going to face teams as good at leveraging your mistakes as Tampa Bay every series, but every good team does different things well. And I promise you, Houston's going to pitch well, and they're going to hit some bombs. They hit better than Tampa does. You cannot be giving up big hits twice in a 3-game series to Jose Siri. I mean, come on. This performance was concerning. I mean, I had some concerns going into the season. This was, beyond any disastrous outcome that I could have ever imagined.
I mean, Mark, that's the thing, though, is, you go play the Astros and it's Yordan Alvarez and Jose Abreu and Kyle Tucker and Jeremy Pena. The Rays are a great team because of the way they build their roster, because of the way that they draft and they develop, and they do all the little things right. And you're spot on with the fact that you can't make mistakes against them or they're going to kill you. Whereas, for a team like Houston, look, they don't make many mistakes either. But at the same time, I mean, these guys are just locked and loaded. And you're getting to a point now where you're kind of scratching your head and you're saying, well, it's 3 games against the 2022 World Series champs. And, do you come back home and you get to Comerica Park and you greet your home fans with an 0-6 record to start the season? If you told me that was going to happen, I wouldn't be surprised. I think people kind of think that's going to happen. I mean, you got to face Hunter Brown. You got to face Framber Valdez. You got to face Christian Javier. Those are really good pitchers. Those are really good pitchers with some nasty stuff. And so far, as we mentioned, the Tigers have not dominated the strike zone so far in the Scott Harris era.
It's a little bit concerning to me because I don't think any of us really knew what to expect out of the type of roster that Scott Harris put together. Obviously, style-wise, it's an homage to what they did in San Francisco. It's a lot of mixing and matching. It's a lot of trying to create platoon advantages. It's a lot of taking flawed players, trying to employ them in circumstances of leverage, that things they think they do well. And to be really honest with you, they have a pretty concerning roster. I mean, let's kind of get into it. They've already basically told Jonathan Scope, you're going to be a platoon player. You're going to face left-hand pitchers and the occasional right-hander. We're going to give Zach McKinstry at bats at second base. And I think you and I, from the moment we saw this transaction and then kind of were reading the handwriting on the wall as far as what we thought playing time was going to be, we're pretty concerned about it, because it's not like Zach McKinstry had, 3 great years of AAA and nobody had really given him an opportunity before. I mean, the Dodgers are a pretty savvy ball club, and he was in their system for 7 years. If Zach McKinstry was going to be a contributor at the major league level, the Dodgers sure find a way to use you and use you well to help them win. Never happened in LA. They got traded to the Cubs on a terrible team, got 199 at bats, and didn't even, hit over 200. So it's not like he's had no opportunity to perform at the major league level, or there's not a lot of video demonstrating the caliber of player he is. Yeah, I get that he hit 335 in AAA, but there's a lot of guys that hit great in AAA. I looked up the leading 10 hitters in AAA West last year who had over 250 at bats, and only one of them is going to play in a major league roster this year. So, I mean, I get, you and I grew up like lots of us did, looking at the backs of baseball cards, reading baseball encyclopedias, reading fan graphs, trying to interpret performance numbers of lots of players. But what you come to learn when you start doing this more in an analyst position or a beat writer position is you need to see guys play, and you need to see them play against major league players, because the biggest chasm in talent at any level of baseball is the difference between AAA and the major leagues. I mean, and it's not close. I mean, people may wrongly think there's a difference between low A and AAA, but it has no relationship to the difference between going from AAA to the major leagues. And, the Zach McKinstry move is just really puzzling for me. Not only that, he has no options. And yeah, okay, I get it. They can burn him off in the middle of May, but it's kind of puzzling that that's where they're going to start hanging their hat, don't you think?
Yeah, that jump from AAA to the big leagues is unlike any other. It's a totally different animal in the big leagues, as I've been told from several big leaguers who had to get through AAA to get up there. But yeah, the trade really didn't make sense to me. 3 days before opening day, you cut some guys who had been in camp with you all spring fighting for a job for various reasons that, some of them are understandable. But look, I mean, this is a guy who hit 335 with 4 homers and, 417 on base percentage in AAA last season, 12% walk rate, almost 15% strikeout rate. I understand the idea. Like, I get it. You want to get a left-handed hitting infielder, platoon him with scope. I understand like the logic behind it, but it didn't really make sense when it actually happened, right? Like, I think that idea is great, but is Zach McKinstry really that guy? A guy with no options, somebody who you have to trade an underrated pitching prospect in Carlos Guzman, a guy who, look, I mean, I understand he might not be the greatest thing that we've ever seen, on a mound, but he ate some innings last year and he was working his way up. He pitched in high West Michigan and also got a little taste of Double-A. Fastball sits around 94. Average fastball command, struggles to generate swings and misses outside of the zone, but has a quality changeup, and it's a development piece. And you trade that away for a guy who, and by the way, with Guzman, his final 52 and 1/3 innings, 1.89 ERA last season to finish out the year. So to trade that for a guy who doesn't really seem to fit on this roster long-term doesn't really make sense for me. I mean, he's basically McKinstry, a left-handed hitting version of Zach Short. And I know how you feel about Zach Short. I think Zach Short's a great guy. I don't really think he's the greatest ball player. But look, when the Cubs went out and got Dansby Swanson this offseason and they were going to make him their everyday shortstop, Zach McKinstry knew he probably wasn't going to have a job on the opening day roster. He also knew he didn't have any options. So he figured, okay, I'm probably going to be DFA'd and I'm basically going to be playing for my job this spring. And he went 3 for 38, 7 walks and 8 strikeouts, but 3 for 38 in a spring training in which he felt like he was playing for his next job. And, Tigers gave him that opportunity. I just don't understand. I understand why the move was made. I get the process behind it. But then obviously you got to look at the performance and you have to understand that, sure, this guy has raked against minor league pitching since 2019, but so have a lot of guys. A lot of guys rake against minor league pitching. It's making that jump to the big leagues. And the Tigers feel like they have the systems in place to translate that from the minor league level to the major league level. That's what Scott Harris said. He says, we feel like we have the systems in place to give him that opportunity in the big leagues and help him transition those numbers that we're seeing in Toledo to the big leagues. And after what I saw through 3 games, I don't know if there's a system in place to do that.
Yeah, it's my way of saying this is it wasn't the what, it was the who. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea behind it was fine. I get you want to have a left-hand hitting second baseman to weave in there that has high on base percentage and has some pedigree of doing it at various levels. I just, really question who it was they decided they think can do that at the major league level. He's never demonstrated it before. And if you watched him this weekend, I'm not sure he had a good swing. So,
I mean, Mark, look, it's a 7% walk rate in the big leagues. It's a 29% strikeout rate in the big leagues. You can talk about the minor league numbers all you want, but he's had 121 games. He's had opportunities and he hasn't been able to do it. But it seems like the Tigers are stuck with him now. I mean, until someone else emerges or until they feel like they have to move off of him. But obviously, Scott Harris went out and acquired him for a reason. So I would assume he's going to try to ride with him and develop him into something, at least until it reaches a point of you got to send him down. You got to DFA him. You got to DFA him at some point.
Let's talk about a few of these roster decisions, playing time, and what we're going to see. I have a few comments on that, so I'll get right to what I think is a possibility of happening. Then I want to talk a little bit about Miguel Cabrera, how often they're going to play him, Matt Vierling. I want to talk about the bullpen too, but here's what I see as a possibility pretty quickly is if Tyler Nevin continues to hit at AAA, and he's hit up a storm the first series there, within the next few days, he's going to get recalled. Now, initially, if I'm going to make a guess who he'll get recalled for, it'll probably be Ryan Kreidler, which is a little disappointing, but I don't think that big a deal. Kreidler can go down and play shortstop in AAA for a while and get some at-bats. But if not, what they may try to do is, if they decide that McKinstry really can't play, and they may decide that pretty quickly, is Nevin will play a little more. Nevin will play third base. He'll play a little more than I thought he was going to play. Not all the time, but a decent amount of time.
Platoon Maton and Scope.
And they may start playing Maton somewhat at second base.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't hurt their defense and probably adds to their offense. The next move after that, if he hits, and he had an okay first series, but if he hits, is to bring Parker Meadows up to play center field. And at that point in time, you're going to have to decide who plays left and who plays right between Meadows and Green. Because really, to be honest with you, I think also against left-handers, Eric Haas is going to start playing more left field, catching less. The difference between Rogers and Haas behind the plate was pretty noticeable.
Definitely.
And I think Matt Vierling's going to have to start swinging a hotter bat. His at-bats have not been competitive at all either, nor have I seen him hit the ball hard since the first week of March. And I asked you a question last night, and I got an interesting answer, which was, what do you think the percentages are that Matt Vierling plays games in Toledo this year? And you tell him what you said to me.
Yeah, no, I felt like it was maybe 5%. Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was maybe 5% when the season started, and now it's climbing. I threw out 33% chance because I'm just throwing out a number there, but that number's climbing. He doesn't look very comfortable at the plate right now. Talking to him after Sunday's game, he says he feels like he's really timed up and everything feels good. He just faced some really good lefties, and that's kind of what happens when you face good pitching. But there's a lot of good pitching in the big leagues, and you're going to see that a lot throughout the season, especially early in the season with all these teams that the Tigers are playing. There really aren't a ton of guys that are going to give you a break and give you a chance to catch your breath. And we talked about this on the podcast, and I've written about it, and we've had discussions off air about it, just the swing mechanics and some of those question marks that we have. But regardless of those, you just got to start swinging the bat better and making better swing decisions and giving your team a chance, especially if you're hitting leadoff. He's now had 2 opportunities as the leadoff hitter, and those haven't been productive games for him, not even at all. So he's definitely a little bit concerning. And at that point, if you're talking about bringing up Parker Meadows, and I know we're getting way down the line here, but at some point, you have to talk about, what move do you make? Is it a Kerry Carpenter move? Is it a Matt Vierling move? Then you have no right-handed hitting outfielders. You're scratching your head outside of Haas. There could be some roster issues, but I think those things are kind of more into the future. I think in the right now, you just want to see Matt Vierling start to hit the ball, make some good contact, and make some better swing decisions.
I don't think it's not going to surprise me if the shuttle between Detroit and Toledo is so active that you basically need a bus that you're going to be, loading up pretty frequently until you can find a mix and a roster that's competitive. The only person I thought that played with any swag this weekend was Nick Maton. That was it. I thought Baez was okay, especially defensively, and had more competitive at-bats than people like to think. But
good to see Austin Meadows get a few hits, though.
Austin had some swings. Jakey had some swings today, but it was
brutal.
Let's get to the bullpen, because at first, as spring was going, progressing, I wasn't super concerned because there's a lot of history of Fetter and Hinch creating bullpens out of thin air. But the last week was tragically bad. And the bullpen this weekend in Tampa, I think Cisnero threw a scoreless inning after they had already had a corner pronounce them dead. I don't know if there were any other relievers in the entire weekend that put up a 0 in their appearance. It was a nightmare.
Alex Lang did throw up a 0. Alex Lang threw up a 0.
Alex Lang threw a 0 today. He did.
But that's the list, though. That's the list. Jose Cisnero and Alex Lang, and both those guys. Cisnero walked a batter and Lang gave up a hit, so they weren't even clean innings. But
yeah, what was really concerning to me was anytime the Tigers have been competitive in the last 2 years, it's because A.J. Hinch has the capacity to manage a bullpen very well, and he knows how to get 11, 12 outs and bring home wins, and he uses the bullpen to his advantage. And I just am struggling to think how he's going to maneuver 11, 12 outs with how these group of relievers are performing. So, all right, I want to come back and talk more about this, but we need to take a break. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, let's get back and discuss the bullpen. It's an extremely integral part to any Hinch team winning. And it would seem to me that it's likely that who do you think is going to close between Cisnero and Lang when they actually have a save opportunity?
Yeah, that was going to be the thing, right? You have to have the lead in the 9th inning to do that. But yeah, probably Alex Lang to start, and maybe or Jose Cisnero. One of the two. Probably Lang, just because he's the guy that's probably the most proven and probably your best swing and miss guy out of the bullpen. Granted, we know that he has issues walking guys, so the walks could definitely be a problem. But look, it's not the same bullpen as it used to be, Mark. You talk about A.J. Hinch always was talking about that path to win out of the bullpen, and for as bad as they were last year, you almost ask yourself, if they didn't have that bullpen, how much worse would they have been? And you kind of wonder, well, is that what this season could be? Because Andrew Chafin now pitches for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Joe Jimenez now pitches for the Atlanta Braves. Michael Fulmer pitches for the Chicago Cubs. And Gregory Soto, I know he had 11 losses last year, but he was pretty darn good in save situations, and the stuff is nasty. He pitches for the Philadelphia Phillies. And you looked at that and you say, okay, those were, your highest leverage relievers that you had last season. And now you're left to Alex Lang and Jose Cisnero, who are shaky at best. And the rest of the bullpen, it feels like it's just super. Either one day they're going to be on or one day they're going to be off. Trey Wingenter got his first appearance. I love the stuff, but he looks scared as can be out there. I mean, it almost was like it was his debut again. And I know he hasn't pitched until 2019, so I'd like to see him go out there again. And he's going to get the opportunity to do that. But you're just left scratching your head. If all you have is Alex Lang and Jose Cisnero as your high leverage relievers, and you're hoping that Trey Wingenter can both stay healthy and really lock it in and throw strikes at the highest level, you kind of worry, don't you? Don't you worry about how bad this thing could get if AJ Hinch doesn't have that bullpen that's going to give him the path to win?
I think the biggest issue I have right now is it's getting real old, and Scott Harris seems to have brought this philosophy with him, especially from San Francisco, where he's compiled an entire roster full of players that you keep saying to yourself, if they just get a little bit better, they'll be really good. Or I can dream on this guy, or I can see his talent. He just needs to polish himself just a tad more. And they have an entire roster almost of guys that are on the verge or just need to get a little bit better or just need some experience. Or there's, just besides Javi Baez and a 40-year-old Miguel Cabrera, who looked ancient today, kind of hurt my feelings just even watching him today. They have an entire roster of those guys.
But Mark, in the bullpen, I don't mind if you go and you get Andrew Chafin and you re-sign him. They didn't want to re-sign him. They didn't want to bring him back. Like if this bullpen,
Michael Fulmer either
into this bullpen, right. They didn't want to re-sign him. Didn't even call on him. So look, like if you have these guys in the mix and you also supplement them with some pieces that can actually do some things, you got some fallback options. You feel good. You can allow these guys to develop. You can allow these guys to grow. But if you don't have that, you're kind of left out to dry if it doesn't work out.
You and I were talking about this, and I said to you, the Detroit bullpen would look a lot better with one more guy that had some semblance of reliability, so that they had three guys that seemed like they might do the job on a particular night or pretty consistently. And then the other three or four guys, because you're going to have, you got Mason Englert, who's a Rule 5 guy. Can't depend on him for anything. And you have Tyler Alexander, and everybody will want to tell me how he struck out 7 guys yesterday, and I'll just want to tell you how he gave up a 2-run homer and threw 3 1/3 and gave up 2 runs. It was nice. He struck out 7 guys. Great. So, the point is you got to have 3 really reliable guys to at least have a passable opportunity to win. They only have 2. And I think I used this particular analogy is that Scott Harris has made quite a few moves. A lot I really liked. A lot I was willing to wait and see. But too many times it seems like he's making the I'm the smartest guy in the room move. And you would like to see a few of them start seeming like they were clever. Or, he picked up a guy from the scrap heap that was good. And I know it's only been 3 games, but
right. We got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, there hasn't been too much of that yet. So, I was a huge, I led the campaign to get rid of Al Avila. I was first on that train and I drove the train. And I'm not asking you to fire Scott Harris. What I am, and I like a lot of his philosophy, but, there's talk, and then, you got to play games. So, I'd like to see a little more performance. I've seen quite a few things that make me a little nervous about some of the evaluations that he's made. And, doesn't mean that you can't learn from your mistakes, but it's a little scary right now. It's not.
But Mark, doesn't that fall back on AJ Hinch though too? Does it not? I mean, just you had all this time in spring training to prepare these guys and get ready, and then you come out and you lay an egg in your opening series, and it just looks miserable. And look, I understand it's 3 games, right? Like we might see Trey Wingenter go back out the next time and look great. We might see Garrett Hill finally, get it locked in. And I'm not saying that Garrett Hill is going to be an all-star. I'm not saying that Trey Wingenter is going to be an all-star. Can they be at least usable? Can they be usable pieces? I think so. So how much of that falls back on AJ Hinch too, do you think? Any?
Well, I think a lot falls back on AJ Hinch. I think this weekend, it's incumbent upon the manager to have his team ready to play. And
that's more of my point.
It's incumbent upon the manager to make sure his team is executing the plan. You can't tell me the Detroit Tigers followed the game plan hitting this weekend. If they did, we have a much bigger problem than I had anticipated. But yeah, listen, AJ Hinch is not blameless here. And I love AJ Hinch. And I think AJ Hinch can get you to the promised land if you give him a fighting chance. But at the same time, I used to laugh at Ron Gardenhire led Tigers teams because, Ron may have been pretty good for the Twins in 2007, but when he was managing the Tigers, I haven't seen a team play dead for 2 years. It was obnoxious, and I never thought his team was prepared, and I never thought his staff was any good. So, you can't yell and scream about how poor Ron Gardenhire was and then watch how they executed this weekend in Tampa and not think that AJ Hinch has some culpability for the level of intensity and the level of confidence his team's playing with. They look like deer in the headlights, the entire team. There wasn't a swaggy at bat out there. It was really concerning, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and that's where it's going to be interesting to follow. I mean, you're right, because on one hand, AJ didn't really get a whole lot to work with, especially, we talked about the bullpen and the importance of that to, what he's able to do to get a team to win a game. And he is masterful when it comes to managing bullpens. There were guys, look, Trey Wingenter said that he signed with the Tigers because AJ Hinch knows how to maneuver a bullpen. And there are guys that come to Detroit because they know what AJ Hinch can do for them in terms of putting them in the right spots. You need the right players to put in the right spots. You need players that can perform at this level and that can play at the highest level. And you do have guys like Austin Meadows and Javier Baez and Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green, and you got Nick Maton, and Matt Vierling is supposed to be something. We'll see if that happens. And Jonathan Scope has been around for a really long time. You'd expect some of these guys to bounce back. And I think getting them there is kind of on Hinch, but also on the same, line of thinking. It's like there really isn't that guy in this lineup that's just going to be a dude and go out and hit for you when you need him to hit. Same thing in the bullpen. You have Lang and you have Cisnero, 2 guys that, at certain times they can get the job done. Other times they can't throw a strike. And then you got a bunch of cast-offs that are coming in and you got to try to fix them. And I don't think that really helps AJ in terms of, getting him in a spot to use guys where they're most effective. If you need somebody in the 7th inning, or you need someone in let's say in Trey Wingenter's case, you need someone to come in and take over for Spencer Turnbull, who couldn't get an out in the 3rd inning, it felt like. And that's not a good position to put him in. Like that's not where you want to use Trey Wingenter for his first appearance in the big league since 2019. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, and it'll be an interesting dynamic to watch throughout the season as it unfolds and as players come up and as players go down, and as we see performances evolve too, because we know that 3 games is such a small sample size over 162. But I think it's important to point out some of the things that we're pointing out, just because you're going to want to watch as the season goes along to see who's getting used in what situations and kind of what are different people within the organization saying, because it's head scratching for sure. And you just really would have liked to see him come out and play a little bit better, or maybe a lot of bit better in the first 3 games.
Non-competitive, man. Just we're competitive for 5 innings on Thursday, and Beyond that, they were competitive for 4 and a third innings today, but you don't make your money in the first 12 or 13 outs of a game. You make your money in the last 10 to 12 outs of a game, and they were just abysmal, in the backside of games these last couple of days. All right, since we just opened the season, we have to do a little prognosticating about, victories and some things we think might happen in the year. I kind of always hate doing this because nobody even remotely gets it correct, but I thought it's still fun. We'll go on the record. We'll let people make fun of us in the end of September and October for these predictions, but how many wins you see for this ball club?
All right, so we did at the Free Press, we did a story before opening day where we had a group of the writers, some columnists, an editor. We had a bunch of us kind of jump in, and it was kind of like a round table, if you will, in the sense that we answered a bunch of burning questions. And so I have to, even after 3 games, I got to stick with my win total because this is kind of what I have out everywhere. But I've got him at 73 wins. I don't know how I feel about that now, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to ride with it. I mean, look, my biggest point that I made when I was predicting 73 wins was I said, offense matters. Last year, as we all know, the Tigers were the worst team in baseball when it comes to offense. 3.44 runs per game, career worst performances from Javier Baez, Jonathan Scope, Austin Meadows couldn't stay on the field for some injuries and mental health issues. And I figured, all right, Baez and Meadows, they'll bounce back. I mean, these guys are former All-Star players. They're serious bounce back candidates. Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, they're entering their sophomore seasons. They should take a leap forward. You add Nick Maton, who draws walks. You add Matt Vierling, who limits the strikeouts, should balance out some of that production and limit some of that chase that we've seen for so many years. And so I said, all things considered, 7-win improvement, like that doesn't seem like it's impossible. Now I'm curious about that because I didn't really factor in the fact that the bullpen has gotten a whole lot worse. And, maybe that subtracts from those 7 wins. But I've got him at 73 wins. I'll be on the record saying that. And I'm interested what you think, Mark. What do you got?
I think I'm going to go with 69 wins.
Nice.
69 wins, 93 losses. I think the bullpen's going to struggle here for a while, but I do think a bullpen is something you can fix and find pieces for, and they don't need a dramatic improvement from 1 or 2 guys or to find 1 or 2 guys, even if they've been left by the road by other teams or guys they pick up at the trade deadline in trades for Boyd or Eduardo Rodriguez. And I think the rotation will be okay. Still a little nervous about their hitting, but I think their hitting has a lot more upside, and I don't think they're going to be that patient with a lot of these players. I think, the Vierlings of the world, the, McKinstry's, other players I don't think they're going to let Miguel Cabrera have endless at-bats at DH if he's not hitting. So I think there's a few positions in the lineup in flux, and they're going to run guys in and out. I think the rotation, remember they have not started Lorenzen yet, who I kind of like. I think Wentz is going to be pretty good. A little worried about Matthew Boyd, a little worried that they did not throw him the last week of spring training and then gave him all the way until the Houston series before he threw. So I'm not saying something's a matter, but I'm not saying something's not a matter. And I said that the day that I saw them scratch him. So, starting pitching, I don't think they have a ton of depth. So, those are my reasons why I'm a little concerned, and I have them for 93 losses. So who do you think is pick a couple of their more high-profile players and give me some idea how you think their season might go?
Yeah, look, first and foremost, Matt Boyd did throw on the backfields on Wednesday. But again, I'm a little bit concerned they didn't just throw him in a big league spring training game. That was somewhat head-scratching, but it sounded like they wanted to get their relievers that were in competition for final spots an opportunity to pitch, and none of those guys performed in those games. But look, yeah, no, I think high profile guys in Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green, I think it really kind of starts there. I mean, you look at Javi Baez, you know what you're going to get out of him in the long run, just in the sense that you can kind of count on 15 plus homers, and you're praying for the return of 25 homer Javi Baez. I think Austin Meadows is still completely up in the air in terms of what to expect. I don't even want to make a prediction on that just because we haven't really seen enough to know. I was really encouraged by the way that he swung the bat against McClanahan in particular. That's a left-handed pitcher, and he swung it really well in that first game of the season back at the Trop where he had played for a few years. But I don't want to predict on him yet just because I think there's a lot that we still need to find out. But I do think it's Torkelson and Green. That's really what it comes down to. We've talked about it several times. I've written about it several times. Look, you draft a guy number 1 overall in the 2020 draft in Torkelson, and you get a guy number 5 overall in 2019 in Riley Green. Those are cornerstone guys that you're expecting to be key pieces in the heart of your lineup for years and years and years to come. And I look at Torkelson and I say, okay, he's going to improve because I don't think he can get any worse. Kind of in the same way that I initially thought, the Tigers couldn't get any worse this year, right? But with Torkelson, he was crushing the ball all spring. I still like the swings that he's having so far in the season. I like the swing decisions that he's making. He looks somewhat comfortable. He's not getting rewarded, hitting a lot of balls on the ground. I think in time, we're going to see him come out of that. And I think he gets back to doing more of what he was doing in spring. But, at some point, the hits have to fall, right? The homer's got to fly. The ball's got to go. And love what he's doing defensively. He's saved Javi's butt several times last season. He saved McKinstry's butt the other day on a double play turn that was skipped in the dirt. That was a horrible turn. But I like what he's doing defensively. We got to see it come around on offense. I feel good about him. I think he's going to have a good season. I don't like predicting numbers for guys, but I feel pretty confident that he's going to get it going and be a key piece. And then for Riley Green, got to start getting the ball in the air. That's something that was a problem for him last season. It was a problem for him in spring training. He talked about thinking pure swing thoughts. So far, that hasn't translated to more balls in the air. He looks fine in center field. He's not good on balls that he has to come in on to field. We saw him have some trouble with that. But again, when you're playing at the Trop, that dome is a mess. I couldn't even imagine taking a fly ball out there, so I wouldn't look too deep into that. He's got great instincts out in center. But it all comes down to the bat for both of these guys. And for Green, we just got to see him get the ball in the air. He hits the ball hard. Once he elevates the baseball, he's going to be just fine. The question's going to be, can he do it, and how long does it take him to get there?
I think Green will hit 20 homers. I think he'll be a 3-WAR plus player.
So you're the numbers guy.
I think Torkelson will also hit 20 homers. I am not very worried about Spencer Torkelson now, and that's the first time I've ever said that about him. I did say it early in spring training. That seemed to work out pretty well. I like what he's doing right now. I think Maton will hit between 16 and 20 homers. I like what I'm seeing from Nick Maton. I like that he takes walks.
He's got to hit some off speed, though. He's got to hit some off speed.
I think
breaking balls.
I think he'll learn how to hit off speed mistakes, if you understand what I mean by that. I really like some of the walks he took this weekend on some tough pitches. So for starters, I can't even predict numbers for their starting pitching. I think, with a terrible bullpen, it's really difficult. You can see how, there were inherited runners allowed to score all over the place by this bullpen. So it makes starters' numbers look way worse than they could be when, you throw 5 1/3 and you've given up 1 run, you leave a guy on first, and then a reliever comes in and, blows the entire thing up, and you get charged with another run or 2 more runs, or it really skews your ERA. So it's tough for me to predict. But, like I said, 69 wins. I think Javi will be close to a 4-WAR player. I actually have some confidence in what Javi Baez is looking like and doing. He seems a lot more comfortable in his skin this year. His defense looks a lot better. He's been in the strike zone a lot more. And hopefully once they get over the tragedy that was these first 3 games and they can get into some type of groove playing every day, they'll perform a lot better. So, it's tough to predict numbers in a season, especially in the first week of the season, and players that are so inexperienced and coming off a terrible week. So, all right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back in a minute. All right, so we got a Houston series coming up. We're coming home for the home opener. Why don't you go over a little bit who we're going to see this week and give everybody an idea who's going to throw maybe, and who a little bit on the teams we're going to see.
Yeah, so for starters, Tigers are going to be seeing the Houston Astros first, and it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday games. Matthew Boyd against Hunter Brown. Many people know Hunter Brown from Wayne State University and his career there, somebody in the backyard that the Tigers seemingly let slip. And I don't know if they weren't on him or what the deal was there, but that's a Wayne State guy who could have ended up pitching for the Tigers. But pitching for the Astros, he's going to face off against Matt Boyd on Monday. On Tuesday, Matt Manning against Framber Valdez. And on Wednesday, Eduardo Rodriguez against Christian Javier. That Matt Manning-Framber Valdez matchup, I do not feel good about. The Matt Boyd-Hunter Brown matchup, I like Boyd. Boyd's a guy who I think is going to give you 3 innings, then give up maybe a 2 or a 3-run shot, and then is going to get you through 5 or 6 innings. I feel pretty good about that. The question then is going to become, can the Tigers score 2 or 3 runs on Hunter Brown? And he's pretty filthy, throws hard, about as good as it gets. The Matt Manning, Framber Valdez is just so good. And I haven't seen enough of Matt Manning to feel confident that he's going to be able to put together consistent innings at the highest level in that kind of an environment, facing that kind of a lineup. They don't have Jose Altuve, and that lineup is still so dangerous. I don't see how that goes well for Matt Manning. And then I think the matchup on Wednesday could actually be pretty good between Eduardo Rodriguez and Christian Javier. For your Miguel Cabrera scheduling, too, I think it's important to mention he played all 3 games against the Rays. He's going to play Tuesday against the Astros against a left-handed pitcher. It sounds like he won't play Monday or Wednesday, but will be available off the bench in pinch hit opportunities. And then he's going to come home with the Tigers, of course, and play the home opener on Thursday against the Boston Red Sox. Spencer Turnbull is going to start that game, and fans are going to get a chance to see Miguel with his one last home opener at Comerica Park. It's a season of last for him, and they're going to let him play in that game. It was interesting, too, real quick, to jump into Miguel, Mark. They played him all 3 games against the Rays. I was very surprised to see that. I understand using him against left-handed pitchers, it makes a lot of sense. He's not very good against righties. Obviously, his knee is no good. But it was in Saturday's game. The Tigers were losing by 10 runs in the 9th inning, and there were 2 outs. And there were available hitters on the bench just because why not, right? And I understand Miguel's not playing the field, but they had already pulled off Javier Baez. They had already pulled off Austin Meadows just because of where the score was at. And A.J. Hinch let Miguel Cabrera bat, and then he let him run the bases after that because Miguel drew a walk and then ended up advancing from first base to second base on a hit from Zach McKinstry, of course. And I was a little bit concerned when I saw Miguel at second base because I said, man, if this next hit is a bloop into right field, Miguel loves blowing through the stop signs. He's chugging home, and you always worry about that. You always hold your breath when Miguel is trying to go from second base to home and trying to blow through the signs and make a play on his own. You worry about it. And so just to have him on the field in that late of a situation was interesting. Sunday morning, reporter asked AJ about it, and there was a few questions fielded about Miguel, and he kind of just said it's going to be a series by series thing, and he's going to try to let people know ahead of time because he understands a lot of people are coming to check out Miguel for the final time this season. So yeah, that's his schedule, and that's kind of what it looks like for the Tigers facing the Astros. We talked about it, man. The Astros are dangerous. They're as good as it gets. They're World Series champs. Tigers have their hands full.
Then they come home opener, play Boston, and you have Spencer Turnbull on the mound for the home opener. Boston not predicted to do too much this year, but actually probably is scrappier than people want to give them credit for. I mean, they still do have Rafael Devers playing third base last time I looked. Tristan Cassis is kind of interesting at first, and Boston is got some lower level but interesting starting pitching. So I think anybody the Tigers play these days you can never take for granted how good or not good they are. So should be an interesting week. As long as we're not playing in Tampa Bay in a weird stadium against a team that keeps taking our lunch money, I'll take my chances that it's an improvement over what we saw these last 3 days. I wanted to touch a little bit on something everybody seems to be pretty interested in, and that's we got some minor league assignments this week. So if you're curious where some of your prospects are playing, and we should be, I mean, obviously Parker Meadows is at Toledo, Andy Ibanez, Tyler Nevin, quite a few other people are at Akil Baddoo, Miguel Diaz,
Jahan,
Justin Henry Malloy, all at Toledo. Our buddy Raj Castillo has gone down there to see him already 2 times. I kind of questioned his intelligence about going for the second time, but Raj is a diehard when it comes to that stuff, and you can see their stuff at Tiger Minor League Report if you ever want to see how prospects are doing. He and Chris do a great job of cutting things up. At Erie, you got Cole Keith, you got Workman. Yeah, they had a lot of shortstops and second basemen at Toledo that you saw in spring training, but predominantly you're looking at Cole Keith, Dylan Dingler, who's on the DL, Wilmer Flores, Ty Madden, Reese Olson's at Toledo. That's about the 3 real pitching. Dylan Smith. I'm not a huge Dylan Smith guy. A lot of people like Dylan Smith. I haven't seen enough of him to love him or dislike him. I think that his stuff is okay, but I need to see a little better health and a little more performance before I get too excited about it. I'm not too excited about the Tigers pitching prospects. In addition to that, I took a look. One of my personal favorites, Christian Santana, will be at Lakeland with Peyton Graham, a pretty high draft choice last year. So that'll be the middle infield, probably at Lakeland. Chase Young is going to be at High A West Michigan. I'm leaving some other guys out that are at West Michigan.
Isaac Pacheco is going to be West Michigan.
How could I forget Isaac Pacheco?
Right.
Somebody we really like. So he'll be playing third at West Michigan. Go visit our buddy Danny Hasty and see what's going on there. I will say, I said this to you. I looked at the
Roberto
pitchers.
Campos too, by the way. We can't forget him. We can't forget Roberto Campos.
Yes, Roberto Campos will be getting his first exposure to cold weather maybe in his life at West Michigan here early in April. I think both those teams start maybe tomorrow. So I am a little concerned because I looked at the prospects. I have never seen the Detroit farm system have fewer pitching prospects at low and high A than they currently do. It is startling how few arms they have at the bottom of their minor leagues. It's holy smokes. And I would expect that to be a pretty large emphasis of both things they try to acquire at the trade deadline in exchange for, like I said, I have almost never seen the bottom of their minor league, roster devoid of pitching prospects like I have this year. And I would expect that to be a point of emphasis both at the trade deadline when they would like to think they're going to move both Boyd and Eduardo Rodriguez, and in the draft this year. If you get a chance to watch Paul Skeen, that's somebody who's definitely going to be in the mix to be either pick number 2 or pick number 3. It was a guy throwing 100 in the 7th inning, so it was definitely pretty interesting. But yeah, the bottom of the Detroit farm system really struggling to find pitching prospects, and I expect that to be, something to keep an eye on, as the year goes on. But that's an idea of where some of your prospects are going to be. You can always go to MILB.com, see how they do every night. I like to do that. We'll be talking about those kind of things. We'll see if we can't get a little bit of information from coaches, maybe do an interview or two. And you got some thoughts on anything about the minor leagues?
Yeah, I just think the big names to watch right now, if you're looking for when some help might be coming, it's going to be watching Parker Meadows and just keeping up with what he's doing in Toledo, even if you're not able to get down there to the ballpark to see him, just to keep tabs and check the box score every day, just to see how he's doing and to see where he's at. So far, so good for him. Justin Henry Malloy is another one to keep tabs on. I wasn't very, he didn't surprise me or anything like that in spring training. He kind of was underwhelming to me. I thought he was going to come out and kind of show me something, and I didn't see a ton in spring training. But he's a guy that controls the strike zone, draws walks, at least at the minor league level, he's done that. So that's a guy to watch in Toledo. Donnie Sands is someone just to kind of keep an eye on. I'm not super high on him either, but that is a new acquisition that came in as part of that Maton Vierling trade with the Phillies. Andy Ibanez is another name that I think could potentially come up at some point and fill a void. And he's pretty good at putting the ball in play and making contact, and the Tigers have not done that so far. I know it's 3 games, but Andy Ibanez is pretty good at putting the ball in play. Akil Baddoo, of course, is another one to watch. I don't know if he's actually ever going to make it back up to the big leagues, just considering the fact that you start to get buried when you think about, Carpenter beat you out, Parker Meadows is coming right on your tail, and you already got a bunch of left-handed hitting outfielders in the big leagues. That makes it pretty difficult. Tyler Nevin, of course, you got to watch him just because he's coming back from that rehab assignment and working through some things and looks pretty good so far. So you got to watch him moving forward, especially as we get through the week. In terms of Double-A, the one name, and it's kind of my last name to watch, a lot of lower-level guys I try to check in on, but man, you got to just keep tabs on Cole Keith and see how he does. That transition from high A West Michigan to the Double-A Erie level, when you're facing that kind of pitching, the stuff just gets a little bit better. And that's when you kind of start to really realize, what can guys handle? What can guys do? And Cole Keith is pretty good at hitting mistakes, maybe as good as it gets when it comes to a prospect. I want to see how he adjusts to other pitches and is able to handle non-fastballs that maybe aren't in some of his hot zones, and how he adjusts to different game plans, because the scouting reports are going to get a little bit better and he's going to have to adjust off of that. And if he does well and he keeps raking, he's only going to move up. So those are kind of the names to watch for me at the AAA and the AA level. And I think the rest of it we'll be checking in on throughout the summer.
Well, it's getting to be that time. I want to just let everybody know that we seriously thought about playing 60 minutes of music after what transpired this weekend. But, at second thought, we decided to discuss baseball for 60 minutes. I'm excited at the idea that Evan Petzold is coming home. I might have some people meeting him at the airport and, kind of like a returning favorite son. But it's not been home in 7 weeks. So, and I'm sure his cat will be very, very happy to see him. If
2 cats.
If both cats remember who he is. So, but for Evan Petzold, this is Mark Gorash. I'd like to remind you about to rate, share, and subscribe where you listen to podcasts. You can always find us where Evan Petzold writes at the Freep. You can download from there or listen to our podcast straight off freep.com. I'd like to thank our executive producer, sports editor Kirkland Crawford, and executive producer, interim editor, Free Press and Jeanette Delgado, our producer Robin Chan. As always, I'd like to thank my grandson Brayden Michael Gorash and Savannah. We're bringing Evan home for you, and I'd like to say let's hope for a better week. This is Mark Gorash saying peace.